All right, so Tucker Carlson, arguably the most successful white nationalist fascist propagandist within the United States, recently had a sit-down interview with fellow fascist Jair Bolsonaro from Brazil, and it's apparently the entire interview is going to be dropping tonight at 8 p.m., so it'll be interesting to see the entire thing, but he gave us a little bit of a sneak preview here with like a minute-long intro clip, so I wanted to go ahead and watch through this so you can get an understanding of how international fascist solidarity is building on the right now.
The parallels between politics in Brazil and politics in the United States are striking to an American. You are opposed by a coalition of billionaires, college professors, and CNN.
What? What is he even fucking talking about? Jair Bolsonaro is backed by the billionaire class, okay? This is a guy who literally has been running his campaigns in a similar vein to how Donald Trump would pretend to rail against the elites and say that he was going to drain the swamp, and then had his entire campaign financed either by his own money or from outside donations from corporate America and the billionaire class. So that already is just completely insane framing.
Tell us what the opposition wants. What will Brazil look like if your opponent wins?
My election itself was almost a miracle. I had nothing going for me. I was just an isolated member of Congress. I was known as a lower segment of the National Congress in Brazil. I connected my campaign anchored only with a biblical passage, John 8:32. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. The media never gave me any visibility or space. Much to the contrary, they attacked me all the time throughout the campaign. If the left wing does come back to power, in my view, they'll never leave power, and this country will follow the same path as Venezuela, Argentina, Chile, Colombia. Brazil will become one more wagon on that train. The losers will be the Brazilian population, and also the left wing itself. The left wing voters will lose as a result. All of South America will be colored red, if you understand me. And in my view, the United States will become virtually an isolated country in the world.
Okay, so there was a lot to unpack there. I'm not even going to try to get into all of the different things that he was saying there because there's really no point. This guy is out of his goddamn mind, and a lot of what he was just saying there is just straight up like misinterpretation of what is unfolding right now in South America. So number one, okay, the other countries that he referenced there, and the reason they're even doing this interview at all is under the context of Brazil having their presidential elections on, I believe it's October 7th of this year, and Jair Bolsonaro is getting absolutely blasted in the polls, which I'll show you guys here in a second against his left-wing opponent Lula da Silva. But just in terms of the context of this wave that we've been seeing in South America, Latin America more generally recently, he's talking about Chile, he's talking about Bolivia, he's talking about Venezuela, he's talking about all of these different leaders. We had Gabriel Boric down in Chile, we had Pedro Castillo in Peru, we had Luis Arce in Bolivia, we had Gustavo Petro in Colombia, all leftist leaders. None of them are like aggressively Marxist or socialists, but really just like social democrats who are pushing back against really decades and decades of US-backed right-wing dictatorships and neoliberalism within the continent of South America. So that's the context of what he's fear-mongering surrounding this like red wave or a takeover of South America becoming red. That's basically what he's fear-mongering around, but all of those things were fucking great, and if anything, all of those elections are just going to lead to a more cohesive left-wing bloc in South America, leading to them to become less economically dependent on imperialist institutions like the IMF, the World Bank, etc. So it's an absolutely amazing thing that we've been having this sort of resurgence of a pink tide in Latin America, but he's terrified of that, and the reason why he's terrified of that is because he's a fucking fascist, and that's why he's trying to pretend as if Lula da Silva takes power and successfully beats him in this next election, that somehow the left is never going to leave power. I mean, maybe they're never going to leave power in the sense that Lula da Silva's policies would be so popular that he gets reelected and his party stays in power. That could certainly be feasible, but in terms of like stealing elections and undermining democracy, Jair Bolsonaro himself is literally actively trying to do that right now, which we're going to touch on here in a second. But just to show you guys exactly how much he is currently getting clobbered in the polls, which would give you somewhat of an idea why he's going to try to claim that this election is fraudulent, here you can see from US News some of the latest polling data. Brazil's Lula da Silva increases lead over Bolsonaro, has 48% voter support compared to Bolsonaro's 27%. So he literally has a 21% lead over Jair Bolsonaro, and he's trying to set this up as if the election is going to be rigged. I mean, listen, Donald Trump obviously tried to steal the election in 2020, which, oh, by the way, Jair Bolsonaro, I think even still to this day, maintains that the 2020 election was stolen in the United States. But he's literally following exactly in Trump's footsteps, except the difference here is that, Trump, when he tried to steal the election, was only down by 11,000 votes in Georgia and, a couple 10,000 votes here in Arizona and Wisconsin, etc. He wasn't even down by that much. This guy is down by 21 percentage points and is still going to try to steal this election. So talking about undermining democracy, how about you look in the fucking mirror, my guy? I mean, just completely delusional representation of the current situation unfolding in Brazil and in South America more generally. But just to give you more of a perspective in terms of how little he actually cares about the institutions of Brazil or protecting democracy within Brazil, the whole fucking reason why he came to power in the first place, which is, something he was touching on there. He said, my whole rise to power was a miracle in and of itself. It wasn't a miracle. They literally had Lula da Silva, the former president of Brazil, who, oh, by the way, his socialist, scary Marxist policies just so happened to live roughly 20 million Brazilians out of abject poverty. But nonetheless, the whole reason why Jair Bolsonaro took the presidency in the first place was because of a bullshit, entirely fraudulent corruption scandal that was brought against Lula da Silva and had him imprisoned, okay? One of his top allies, here from The Guardian, Brazil calls for Bolsonaro ally to quit after devastating report on leaks. This was actually something that was helped to be exposed by Glenn Greenwald. They say in new disclosures, conservative magazine Veja says Sergio Moro, a close ally of Bolsonaro who led the Operation Car Wash scandal, the corruption scandal, is guilty of serious irregularities, or what I would call fraud. They brought forward a completely fraudulent case alleging things that Lula da Silva was not guilty of, and basically had him temporarily imprisoned, and oh, by the way, no surprises here, with the help of the US government. So, I mean, typical meddling in South America, Central America type of shit. We've seen this for the entire duration of the existence of the United States, so it's really not surprising. But again, you want to talk about free and fair elections, you want to talk about who's undermining democratic principles, it's fucking you. You are the guy who's doing that. But just to give you a little bit more perspective in terms of how disastrous Jair Bolsonaro actually is, not just his fascist tendencies, but also what he's doing to the Amazon rainforest right now. So here from Rolling Stone, they say what to do about Jair Bolsonaro, the world's most dangerous climate denier. And the reason why they're saying that he is the world's most dangerous climate denier is because Brazil has a massive swaths of the Amazon rainforest within their borders, and the Amazon rainforest is massively important in pushing back against climate change because it is the single largest carbon sink in the entire world, meaning that it in a net way absorbs carbon dioxide and sucks it in from the atmosphere. And so what is Jair Bolsonaro doing? He's basically allowing the Amazon rainforest to be polluted and destroyed by multinational corporations who are profiting off of this destruction. So again, you want to talk about other aspects outside of his outright rejection of democratic principles here on climate change. Pretty important thing, especially given the country of Brazil and its makeup and how important that plays on the global stage. But this is just one aspect of this. Again, going back to the democracy side of this, Bolsonaro is following Trump's anti-democracy playbook. So they're basically pointing out in this article from Foreign Policy how not only does he still believe that Donald Trump won the 2020 election, but he himself is already trying to undermine public faith in this next election, which he hasn't even lost yet. I mean, it's on October 7th, okay? He has months to try to, do something popular for the Brazilian people, earn a little bit of their support, but instead he's taking an election where he is down by 21 percentage points and is just going to say that it's a fraudulent election and try to stay in power after this, after he loses to Lula da Silva here. But, again, no surprises there because this is the same type of international solidarity that we have seen from fascists here in the Republican Party, but, coordinating with global leaders around the world. Jair Bolsonaro is not the full extent of this. We also had this recently involving Tucker Carlson as well, and the entire Republican establishment as it exists right now. U.S. Conservative Conference. They're talking about CPAC here, the biggest conservative conference in the entire country. They had the conservative conference with Hungary's hardline leader, and they're saying that that reflects the Republican divide, but I think it reflects current Republican unity around fascist principles. They were meeting with Viktor Orban. They had CPAC events with Viktor Orban, a fascist leader of Hungary, and we're basically saying, you're the type of government that we want to have modeled here in the United States. So again, and also he had some specific advice advice for Republicans here in the United States and even for Tucker Carlson. They said Viktor Orban tells CPAC that the path to power is having your own media. Hungarian leader also tells Republicans at Budapest conference that shows like Tucker Carlson should be broadcast 24/7. So again, we come back full circle to this interview that was being done with Jair Bolsonaro. But again, this is why it's important for leftists here in the United States to show solidarity with the uprising of leftist movements around Latin America that we have been seeing recently, because these fascists are definitely going to be engaging in this same type of international solidarity with other fascist leaders, whether it's Jair Bolsonaro or Viktor Orban or a whole host of other leaders that are around the world that Tucker Carlson wants to snuggle up to. So, I mean, listen, this is just part of this ongoing project. Clearly, they have absolutely no regard whatsoever for democratic principles. We, have gotten all of these Supreme Court rulings recently. We've had all of these actions taken by Republican state legislatures. They are completely opposed to democratic principles. They are completely opposed to any democratic checks on the capitalist sector, and that is perfectly exemplified by somebody like Jair Bolsonaro, just as it is by somebody like Donald Trump, just as it is by somebody like Tucker Carlson. So they are all one in the same vein, and you can see, how important it is to push back against this, because if they succeed in, having Jair Bolsonaro maintain power in Brazil, even though he's currently on track to get absolutely obliterated by Lula, then that's massively dangerous, not just for Brazilians, but for this movement in South America, Latin America more generally, and also for the entire planet because of what he's doing to the Amazon rainforest.